Hello everyone and welcome back. So today I want to talk about serializers a little bit. So if you want to read the description of Django REST Framework serializers, just go to django-rest-framework.org, go to API Guide and Serializers. And in here you have a bit of description and first steps how to use serializers. But I guess what I want to say from my side, because when I started with Django REST Framework, that was the first time when I saw serializers and the word serializer, especially for non-English native, it was a little bit daunting. I felt like, just because I don't understand that word, I couldn't really grasp what it does. And it was just so new to me. And from here where I am now, I feel like it was unnecessary because the concept is very, very simple. It's super simple. Serializers are translators. That's how I see it. Like, okay, why do we need serializers? Why do we use those serializer or model serializer? Like, why don't we just send Django data through, whatever? I say, hey, just send that to the client as REST. I don't care how you do it. There's a lot of, abstraction in Django. So a lot of things just happen and we don't even know that it happens. Like, for example, the render template function that just does a lot of cool stuff in the background and sends it over through HTTP and when we return it. So there's a lot of abstraction, and in here they say, hey, you have to build those serializers if you want to use Django REST framework. And I felt like, why is there another thing? It's so similar to models. Why don't we just operate on models? So what helps me is to think that it's a translator. It's something that stands between HTTP and the client and Python-based Django. And because we are going towards REST, and REST framework uses JSON, it just makes sure that whatever happens, it's set in stone and every translation is correct. So basically what I mean by translation is, for example, if you have a model, let's say air pollution entry, on server side, we use Python to build those classes, that are based on the models.model class, and then we specify it there, and then we can instantiate it into an object, and here we have our entry, air pollution entry. So on server side, we can operate on that entry. But what if we want to send it as some sort of representation? We can't just send Django, we can't just send Python through HTTP. HTTP only accepts text. So we need something in between that understands very well Django and also understands the HTTP. And at the beginning I was wondering, can I not use serializers? Like, why would you use serializers? Why there's another concept added here? Since, because the way I was learning Django was, step after step after step, I was moving quite fast. And as I went from function-based views to class-based views, I was like, wow, that was a lot to learn. And then, oh, there's this Django REST framework, I want to learn it. And boom, another couple of concepts that I was just feeling like, why do we need to add those new concepts? And the fact is, you don't need serializers. As I said before, if you build your own logic that will translate stuff, so if you have your object and you want to send it as JSON back to the client because you're using an API, you can do it without a Django REST framework. You can, as I said before, you can just JSONify it and send it. Serializers and the classes that Django REST framework provides you, serializer and model serializer, they are huge help to standardize the work, to make it easier. And basically what we do here, just what we do with Django, we stand on somebody's shoulders, because you can build your own web framework just like Django from scratch if you want. But who wants that? It's so much better to just take someone's work, learn it, take a little bit of time to learn it, understand it, and then work with it. Okay, so let's go back to our IDE and do some playing around. What you can do is you can use this Python console, which is actually a Django console, to be able to import some of your stuff, just parts of your code, and play with it just to see how it works. If you get any errors here, you probably will, because you need environment variables set, because we did something in settings here. We added this OS environment get, and once you start this Django console, it goes through settings first. So if you don't have the secret key, it will hash out. It will say, no, sorry, I'm not going to work. So it's either you can add a default here, so just ABCD or whatever, or you can add those secrets to the preferences. build execution deployment, console, Django console. Okay, and in here you have environment variables, you can save them here. Let me go back to serializers and let me create a new serializer for country. So class, and we want to import, well, just to keep it in a alphabetical order. Okay, so class country serializers model serializer, same story. So class meta model equals country, and in fields, so before what I did was I just passed this string all, but I also want to show you that you can use fields like this. So you just put a tuple here and list out all the stuff from the models that you want to pass. So in this case, I'm going to just copy all of these. So using Option key on my keyboard, I selected them all and paste it here. Oops, why did you not work? Command C and Command V. Okay, again Option and double click on those. Okay, and now quotation mark, left, and backspace, comma, space. And okay, and this comma here is unnecessary. Okay, and we need a bracket, but it worked well. So we have all of them, although, you know, I could just use all, but I'm just showing you, you can also list them, and it's safer because you control it better. If you add anything sensitive here, you don't want to share it with the world. So it's better to specify explicitly what kind of data you want to share with the world. Okay, so let's use this country serializer as our play thingy, and let's go here. So first thing we need to do is from air pollution.serializers import country serializer. So now we have this in our memory, and as you can see, it is loaded in the memory. Okay, so what happens if I instantiate the serializer? So C equals country serializer, enter, and it did work because, you know, I just instantiated something without passing any information in. Just give me an instance of country serializer, but it doesn't do much. If I do something like one of the methods is valid, it's going to give me an error because I didn't pass any data. And as I said before, serializer, and especially the model serializer, is kind of like a middleman between the actual model, Django model, and HTTP. So you need to pass some information, then you can validate it, then you can save it, which is pretty cool because you don't have to, you know, mess around with like, okay, I have some data, I want to make sure that data is correct for my models, and then I want to save them using models. In here, we just pass some data in, which is just plain text, and the serializer knows what to do with it, and you can validate and save it without touching the models, which is pretty cool. So okay, let's check in the models actually which field is required and which is not, and what are the constraints. So I can see here ISO code is required. This seems to be name is required and it needs to be unique. We have some color which is default, so the rest is not required. So only ISO code and name are required, and they also have some cool constraints that we can use for testing our serializer. So let's fail a couple of times. So let me overwrite C with some with country serializer with some data. So that data will have ISO, sorry, it needs ISO code. So it's a dictionary, and ISO code will be for now, it's going to be just like BB, let's say, BB. And the name will be hello. Okay, so as far as I know, this needs to be unique as well. It's a primary key, so it will be unique by default. So right now, it should be fine. So let me just do okay, save it, and now C dot is valid, true, all good. So let's do C dot save. Cool, I just created, and it came back with an information that we created a new model. And by the way, if you're confused, why am I using C all the time? It's really just a placeholder. I'm just building something. I don't need information from the past. I can always grab it from the database, because once I did c.save, I have it in the database, and I'll show you how to get it back. But in here, I'm just using the C as a placeholder, and I'm just adding, I'm overriding it with new things. So let me create, so although it looks exactly the same, I overrode the C with a new instance. And now if I try to validate it, so it's valid, I'm gonna get false. Why? Because we already have BB and we already have hello. They are supposed to be unique. So how can I see what went wrong? So if you're using Django console, you should be able to go here to the instance that we built here, in our memory, and see and look for errors here. You can see that there's something called errors. So let's try it. Errors. Okay, and here we have some information. ISO code, detail, string, country with ISO code already exists. Code is supposed to be unique. The same here. Country with this name exists. Unique. So it gives you an information what went wrong, which is pretty cool, and you want that information. So let's say I'm gonna create a new one. BBB. Hello. And not hello, but okay, let's keep it hello. And let's try to validate again. False. Okay, let's see what happens. See errors. Ensure this field has no more than 2 characters. Let's go to models. Yeah, I said no more than 2 characters. Cool. So as you can see, the serializer, because it's a model serializer, it knows exactly what to do just because it knows the constraints from the model itself. Cool. Okay. So in here we covered the communication from the outside. Someone sent some data here, and the backend was trying to validate and save and so on. And that's how we created this country entry. So what about from the other side? We want to build a serializer from Django side. So we want to say, hey, here's a Django model. Now build a serializer, because the user will be sending some information to update that. So let's say the user sends the primary key of an entry and also some data that needs to be updated. Okay. So let's grab from airpollution.models. I want to grab country. Okay. So let's say we created this BB entry. So let's create a country model, or BB is country.objects.get pk is BB. Okay, so let me see if we grabbed here hello. So that's the country of name hello, and we have some default information here, ISO code pk BB. Okay, so let's say we want to update this object using some data sent by a user via HTTP. It needs to use the serializer to patch those two together. So, and speaking of patch, we have 2 ways of updating. There is put method and patch method. So put method means we need to pass all the information to the serializer, and patch means we send just pk and the data that will change. The rest needs to stay the same. Okay, so let's try the put method. So again, let's create a CountrySerializer, but now we want to pass an instance in here. Okay, so now we're saying, hey, we are gonna work with this object from country model, and we're gonna pass some data here. Okay, so if the user wants to put the information in here, the user needs to pass every single field. So we need to pass ISO code, name, color, longitude, latitude, altitude, right? All of these. So let's go, and ISO code will be still BB, and we need to pass that. And name needs to be, let's say, hello. We don't change that, but let's say we want to change the color. We change it to hash FFF, okay? And what happens if so this is put, I don't say, so there is a way to specify that it's not a put, it's a patch. So I wouldn't have to specify remove, longitude, latitude, blah. But in here, I'm not specifying that. So what happens if I just do that and do C is valid? True. So it's like, okay, you gave me some data, it's incomplete, but I'm happy because none of the data that was missed is required. So then if you do C dot save, cool, yeah, and see here, okay, so we have now none, and removed is false because by default is false. So because we didn't pass anything here and the model says, hey, null is true. Yeah, it can be null. So if you don't pass anything, it's going to be true. I mean, it's going to be false, none. And in removed, we specify default is false. So then by default, it's going to be false if we don't pass anything there. So to keep everything the same as it was, we need to pass all the information into the CountrySerializer data. But I mean, this way is not very convenient because to be able to put updates in the model, you need to know everything about this model. But you can use patch, and patching means you need the PK and only the data you want to change, which is a bit better. So let's try that. So let's create a new serializer here. And I'm gonna just try to change the, say, so we don't change name. Sorry, no. Let's change the name and leave the color. So if I just did this and now enter and then is valid and save, what would happen is when you look at this color here, this would be none because we allow it to be none. Or sorry, it would be back to the default, right? So let's go back here. Sorry, here. And so what you have to do is you need to specify that the partial is true. Okay, so we have our instance, that is our object. It's still the same object from here. Okay, we specify the data, so we need to say, oh, sorry, so we don't even need that ISO code. So let's say I just changed the hello. Okay, so right now it wouldn't work because I need to pass the BB. So let's even try it so you can see what happens. Now is valid, false. Why? Because I didn't pass. Let's see errors. So c.errors, enter, and ISO code, this field is required. So you wanted to pass none in there. Okay, cool, good to know. Let me try again. So all I want to do is I want to change this hello to hello2, and comma, partial, true, and that's what does it. And now again, is valid, true, all good, and save it. And what happened? Let's have a look at our C. So that's the model object. It's not a serializer, it's the model itself. And as you can see, the name has changed. The color stayed the same. I set it to FFF and it's still FFF. ISO code is still BB and the rest is the same. So as you can see, the only thing I changed was this name here, and I changed it to hello2 and it worked. So that's how you do the patch. And it's very helpful because you don't want to pass all the information every time, although only one field is changing. So now, again, we looked at what happens when you send data to create objects or to update objects. So what about when we want to go and send information from Django, from the server to the client? So we want to get the object, serialize it, and send it to the client. Okay. So as I showed you before, here we have this object that we're going to use again. And instead of trying to update it, I'm going to just create a serializer using this instance. Okay, enter. And then if we look at C, we have a nice serialized data here. Oh, errors. What is that error? C, errors. Oh, I see, because that would be, you know, if we validate something, but we don't want to validate anything. We just pass this in here, and I think it would work if I did instance there. So by default, it's instance. And so what I want to get is C data. Okay. And in here, you can see serialized data, ISO code, name, color, removed, blah, blah, blah. So this is a dictionary, return dict. Okay. In here, that is very easily serialized and sent via HTTP to the client. So that's if you have one instance. But what about if you want to send a list of items? So you don't want to just send one country. You don't want to just send one country. You want to send a list of countries. So let's say we have all countries is country dot object.all. It's a query set, and but you can pass it, but you have to specify one more thing. So C, so all C serializer, and in here we pass all C, but also sorry, so not all C. We don't just make it C, okay? It doesn't really matter what the name is. We just want to pass this query set here, and also pass many as true. And now it works. And now if you do c.data, you will see another dict with all the data here. So let's open C and check data, because it's nice and easy to read in here. You have loads of countries here with all the serialized. It's ready to serialize. Just keep in mind, it's still a Python object here, but it's very easy to serialize into JSON or XML or whatever. Cool. So the only difference, you add that many here and you can have a list. If I didn't do that and try C data, I'm gonna get an error because you can't get an ISO code, for example, from query set, because it assumes, hey, you gave me an object, one object, so it should have something called ISO code. But no, you gave me a query set, so just specify that it's many, and then I know what to do. Okay, cool. So these are the very basic things you want to know about serializers. In the future, when we actually use them, you'll be able to practice how to use them and what actually those things do and where to use them and how to use them. So don't worry, this was just kind of like a keep in mind that these things happen and these things are important, but we will expand on serializers in the future. Okay, so thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.